I'd like to add an addition to in-camera for Lakes and Muirfield Sewer under FOIP 24 land.
Put that for 5.3. Anything else?
I also have an in-camera addition. Under land, southwest 9, 24, 25, west of the 4th, FOIP 24.
Can you say that one more time?
Southwest 9, 24, 25, west of the 4th, FOIP 24.
We'll make that 5.4.
Northwest, sorry. Yeah, you did tell me something.
Any other additions or changes? If not, a motion to accept the agenda. Thanks, Donna. All in favor? Motion is carried. We have a public hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. I will recess the council meeting and open the public hearing.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this public hearing for bylaw 2019-11 for the purpose of amending the West Highway 1 Area Structure Plan, bylaw number 2006-05, West Highway 1 or WASP, to include primary commercial uses within the Origins Business Park area, and to add map B identifying the Origins Business Park area, and to make additional amendments to make the whole of the WASP consistent with the aforementioned additions. It is staff recommendation that council open the public hearing for bylaw 2019-11 and recess it to May 21st, 2019 in order to fulfill the land use bylaw 2016-01 requirements for landowner circulation. So the purpose of the amendment is to allow primary commercial uses to be applied for within the Origins Business Park, to include a map that outlines the location of the Origins Business Park, and to amend the whole of the document to ensure it is consistent with the aforementioned changes. The attached report includes the new map B, Origins Business Park location, and outlines the proposed changes of the WASP. Circulation was not completed according to the land use bylaw 2016-01, and staff has undertaken recirculation in order to fulfill these requirements. To date, staff have received 3 letters in regards to the amendment, which are included in this package. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will recess the public hearing until May 21st, 2019 in order to fulfill the land use bylaw requirements for landowner circulation, and we will reopen council. All in favor? Motion's carried. We have a development permit for a variance request. I think I reopened council. I did it together. Do you need separate motions for that, Margaret? Would you prefer separate motions? Recessing the public hearing and opening council? Okay. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. All in favor? Carried? No, I know, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So the purpose of this request is to present an application for a variance to the maximum allowable fencing height on a property with a location approximately 2 miles southeast of Nameka. The location is Plan 171-1778, Block 9, Lot 1, south of 112324. It is staff's recommendation that council choose option 1 to approve DP 2019-034, a variance to the maximum fence height subject to conditions noted in Appendix A of the Development Permit Report, which I will outline for you. So this property is 333 acres, 2 miles southeast of Nameka. It's a direct controlled district. There is 2 cells, cell 1 and cell 2. So the proposal is to construct a 10-foot high fence around the entire perimeter of the 333 acre parcel. The parcel is zone direct control 10, DC 10. The general regulations of the district specify that the fencing shall be a maximum height of 2.44 meters tall and the additional height is requested in order to accommodate 2 barbed wire and 1 hot wire strand at the top of the fence. The bottom 8 feet of the fence will be either a graduated mesh game fence or a chain link fence. The district was approved in 2017 to allow for specialized uses, which include the care, raising, and breeding of endangered species, and the associated facilities required. At the time the DC district was created, the applicant had not taken into consideration the barbed wire portion of the fence. A perimeter fence is mandatory for the facility's accreditation requirements, with the barbed wire, hot wire portion considered a mandatory addition to the 8 feet of game fence or chain link. In order to meet the accreditation requirements and in anticipation of subsequent applications for the specialized uses, the applicant would like to construct a fence which has a total height of up to 10 feet or slightly less. The fence is designed to keep the endangered species inside the property and keep the predators outside. It's the intention of the applicant to keep the existing barbed wire fence around the property and build a perimeter fence several feet inside of the existing barbed wire. This application is for a variance to the maximum allowable fencing height specified in the DC-10 district, not for any other uses listed within the DC zone. Wheatland County Council is the development authority for decisions on variance requests in excess of 10% within direct control districts. So some legislative review. The CMRB, this property is not located within the CMRB area, so it is not impacted by the interim growth plan. The MDP, it does not focus on ground level details such as fencing. However, the DC-10 zone was created as a custom zone. It was designed in order to accommodate a unique use which aligns with various MDP policies and objectives related to agriculture, natural areas, commercial and industrial development, tourism, and institutional development. Land use bylaw requirements. As I mentioned, Council is the development authority for direct control districts for variances. And this entire, this fence will be constructed around the entire perimeter of Cell 2, which includes the north boundary of Cell 1. So, whoops, where did my thing go? There. So there is this map, and this is all Cell 2, and then this is Cell 1. So the fence goes all around the perimeter like this. And as you can see in the DC-10 district, it says fencing shall be erected around the perimeter of Cell 2 to maximum height of 2.44 meters or 8 feet. Fencing not exceeding the maximum allowable height does not require a development permit. So this one does exceed. So our within the DC zone, when it was created, it was mimicking the fencing for industrial commercial. So here it says where chain link fence is erected on property zone commercial and industrial, the fence can be a maximum of 8 feet within setbacks or any height outside of setbacks. So this would require a variance. So circulation comments. We circulated to Siksika Nation because this property borders there, and we didn't receive a response. Internal file review had no concerns. We had no responses from adjacent neighbors. Staff are proposing the following 3 options for council to consider. The council approve DP 2019-034, a variance to the maximum fence height subject to conditions noted in Appendix A of the development permit report, and that with the requested variance fits the criteria for the development authority to grant a variance to the regulations of the land use bylaw, and that with the exception of the aforementioned variance with the stated conditions of approval, the development authority has determined that the proposed fence otherwise complies with the county's land use bylaw, rules and regulations, and the municipal development plan policies. Option 2 is that council refuse the application with reasons given. Option 3 is that council provide an alternative recommendation of their choosing. Staff are recommending option 1 to approve DP 2019-034 based on the following. The DC-10 zone, as approved by council, was designed in order to accommodate a specialized development on this site. The perimeter fence was contemplated within the DC-10 zone. Having the development permit in place requires the landowner to operate in accordance with permit conditions and submit an application and approved plans. And allowing the fence height does not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use and enjoyment of value of neighboring parcels of land. So the proposed conditions are, this development permit is issued solely for the purpose of a variance to the maximum fence height defined as a variance. Variance has been granted, allowing the total fence height to be 10 feet. Development shall be according to Direct Control 10 district requirements. No permanent development shall occur on or over any utility right-of-way or easement. Development to remain consistent with submitted application and approved plans and/or drawings. Applicant to ensure approach is developed to county standards. And our 2 standard notes. Just some diagrams. So there is Nameka. So we are southeast of Nameka, this 333-acre parcel. It has a subdivided driveway, which is part of the parcel. The MRB plan area, so it's over here outside of the plan area. It's also outside of any ASP area, the Eagle Lake and Nameka being the closest. This was a circulation area within 1 mile. This is the site plan, so as you can see, the fence will be around the perimeter of the entire 333 acres. Here's an aerial photo, so there's Siksika Nation, Nameka Lake on the other side, and then one property line to the north that is just bordered by agricultural. Perimeter fence details, so it will be in the ground, dig out curtain, I guess what they call it, 5 feet deep, it says there. 4 feet deep. And then we have the mesh, and then we have the barbed wire and hot wire on the top. There's an example of what the chain link would look like. They haven't decided exactly if they're going to have chain link or this type of graduated game mesh fence. So just some site photos taken from Township Road 232, looking south towards the property on the horizon there. From the middle of the parcel, looking north here towards the road, way off in the distance. And at the south end of the driveway, looking further south into their property. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Through the chair, I just one question for information. In reading through that, it said that the object is to build this fence 2 feet inside the barbed wire fence all the way around. What are the plans to deal with that strip in there as far as maintenance, that 2-foot strip?
I might defer to the applicant to answer that question.
Sir, if you wouldn't mind just coming to the microphone and stating your name. Thank you. Good morning.
The distance between the existing fence and this new fence, the dig out, what we call a dig out, we can either go in ground or horizontal. The horizontal, we will be going horizontal, about 6 inches or so below grade, and it's going to be 4 feet, 4 to 5 feet. So we'll have a 4 to 5 foot distance between the existing cattle fence, which is on our property line, and the new fence. So that will have enough wiggle room to get in, yes. Yeah.
And if you can just state your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
My name
okay.
is Pierre Chartrand.
Thank you.
Do you want me to spell that, or Chartrand? No?
Sure, that might help Margaret.
C-H-A-R, and train, T-R-A-I-N.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I'll move that council approve development permit 2019-034, a variance to the maximum fence height subject to conditions noted in Appendix A of the development permit report. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We have an RFD for a draft policy for certificate of compliance.
Yes, so we would like to introduce a certificate of compliance policy to facilitate an effective and efficient certificate of compliance process for staff and the public when we review real property reports. So I'll just give a brief overview of the policy. Staff are recommending that council approve the certificate of compliance policy. Choose option 1 to approve the compliance policy to provide a consistent process for reviewing real property reports. So just a little brief overview of the policy, which we have had vetted by legal counsel. So when somebody submits an RPR, a certificate of compliance is a letter issued by the county's Planning and Development Department indicating that a property either complies or does not comply with the regulations of the current land use bylaw with respect to setbacks and confirming if valid development permits are in place with the use of the property or improvements shown on the real property report. A certificate of compliance does not identify, regulate, or enforce any Alberta building code or other safety code matter. Certificate of compliance application requirements, we ask that the applicant submit a minimum of 2 original copies, and they can't be any older than 2 years from and dated within 2 years of the application submission. All the fees as outlined in the current master schedule of fees, which right now it's $75 for a compliance request. An RPR is a legal document. The county will not accept photocopies of the RPR or scanned copies of the RPR or RPRs older than 2 years. County staff endeavor to complete a request for compliance within 1 month of submission of an application. When processing a request for a certificate of compliance, the officer reviews the RPR against the county's current land use bylaw to determine if improvements comply with the land use bylaw setbacks and to confirm if valid development permits are in place for all improvements, which include structures, sheds, outbuildings, farm buildings, accessory buildings, dwellings, shipping containers, decks, and any other structures indicated on the RPR, whether permanent or temporary. Section 7 just outlines what we will put in the letter, all of the things that need to be included on a compliance letter. Section 8 outlines that any variance request, so if somebody was not in compliance to the setback and needed a variance, it would have to go through the normal variance process, which would be that they apply for a development permit for the variance. New RPR may not be guaranteed compliance even if the property received compliance in the past, and this is because either the land use bylaw may have changed, or in the past we did not look at if everything had a permit. We only looked if it met setbacks. So maybe 5 years ago it got compliance because it met all the setbacks, and then the same property submits a new report, but now we look at does everything has permits, so it may not get compliance today. The development officer shall rely on the RPR and is not required to undertake an independent site inspection. It's meant to be a snapshot in time when that survey is done, and so that's what we look at, what's on the survey plan, to determine if it's compliant or not. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Council's wishes. Any questions? Consideration of approval?
I'll move the approval.
Thanks, Ben. Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. There's a request for decision for consideration for reduction in the 2019 budget.
Just, could I ask a question of the planning staff before they leave?
Sure.
I've been getting requests from, I should have added this to the agenda, I'm sorry. they're getting requests for a postponement of a public hearing on the May the 7th for that wind project out there. What's the process of that? Because it's all in the process, do we have to open it and then recess it? So we open the public hearing, then recess it for reasons. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. So there was an RFD in the package regarding the budget, and then there was a circulated, some further details regarding some line items. Alan, do you just want to walk us through if there's any sort of consequences to these reductions or?
Yeah, so the consequences are fairly straightforward. The interest income, obviously, we budget on the conservative side, so we feel very comfortable that this is attainable. But if interest rates did drop, then we'd be in a bit of jeopardy there. We don't feel that that would be the case. Reduction to contingency, as Brian had mentioned before, when you're going through the budget, the contingencies there are just for outside things that we don't anticipate. It's a small amount in the whole scheme of things, so we don't see that as a huge challenge. The early incentive admin has been reduced, and that's based on retirements and that have already taken place, so that's doable. The reduction of the manager of community relations, that position would mean that there may be a bit more overtime for existing staff, and it would probably mean a bit of a delay in the IDPs and ICFs finalizing those, but we'll still probably be able to get those completed by the deadline of April 2020 for the urbans and April 2021 for the rurals.
Sorry, you said that was manager of community relations.
Manager of, it's in the report, I don't remember exactly.
Oh,
the
sorry.
title. Manager of Legislative Services.
Thank you.
Yeah. The training and education reduction would have limited to no effect. That was, we anticipate slightly less use of that this year based on what we have for performance evaluations and reviews for staff. Crop loss road, that has never been used out of that account. That was typically used on any particular project, so and specifically on the road projects. Same with bridge engineering. So those two we would remove, and we'll probably remove those in the future as well. Legal for fire reduction, we feel that's doable. We've got through the bylaw, and we feel the agreement is, Stuart's been working with the association, started working with them, and the agreement we feel will be fairly straightforward. There might be a little bit of legal, but certainly not the $25,000 that was in the budget. Contracted services for water and wastewater in the different communities. I think we've talked about that in the past. If we have a major malfunction, we bring that back to council and say, we got a major repair, we need to figure out a way to fund that. So there's a bit of jeopardy there, but we don't anticipate it to be a huge challenge. The only thing we've seen this spring is in Carsland, we've seen more freezing of water lines because of the frost going down a little bit further because of the cold weather in February. Contracted services for planning, that one, the intention was to hire some contracted services to get through the ICFs this year. Again, like I said, that may mean a little bit more overtime for existing staff, and also for not probably we won't get all the ICFs done this year like we'd hoped, but we will still be able to get them done by April 2020 and April 2021 for the rurals. We just have to spread it out a little bit more. And then reduction in wages for planning, because we haven't hired a manager of planning yet. We're in the process of that. We feel that we can reduce some of those wages slightly because we're not quite on timeline by what we'd hoped we'd done. So I think they're pretty straightforward, and we feel that we're comfortable with those. And if there is, as the year goes along, if there is a situation where we are in jeopardy of that, we'll bring it back to council and let you know the circumstance. So.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, discussion?
First off, I want to thank the staff for the work that was done. I apologize to the staff. I've got 18 months under my belt now. This will not happen again. But I appreciate the work that's been done, and I really I thank you for it.
I just want to say thanks for that, Tom. No need to apologize. It's a learning process for everyone, and we'll make sure that you're more in the loop on exactly how the process works in the future. I think you learned a big process this year and how it works, and I wanted to thank the staff for all the work they did of trying to find these cuts. And we sat down for about 2 hours last week before I sent it out, just to make sure that we were all comfortable with these. We had other ones that we were tossing around, and we felt these would be the most reasonable for us to do and most able to do. So thank you very much.
Through the chair, I only had a question on a couple of them. One of them was reduction of the crop loss and the bridge engineering. You want to explain that a little further, how that's, please?
Yeah, so that was just a general account, Councillor Armstrong, that would be for crop loss and bridge engineering. So what we typically do is it's identified by project in the capital budget. So we've never actually utilized those two. So we feel that we can remove those. If there was a circumstance where we had crop loss, I can't anticipate what it would be because we've never used those accounts. But if we did have that situation, we'd bring it back to council and say, well, here's how we can fund it. So.
Okay, I was just reading that. I was thinking, okay, they're going to go back into that policy and change that. That's got nothing to do with the policy.
Everything is specifically for crop loss is identified in each project in the capital budget. So.
I'd like to move that council approve the reductions in the 2019 budget in the amount of $663,000 in the noted areas, and further that the 2019 tax rate bylaw be based upon the new budget reflective of these reductions.
It's actually 670.
I just say I support the motion. I'm glad that we can easily find this kind of reduction. Good for this time of year and the hard times that are coming ahead for people.
So at our intercouncil meeting on March 25th with the town of Strathmore, between our councils, we discussed some ways that we might consider collaborating or looking for efficiencies. At that time, we had discussed that we may direct administration to pursue that with the town of Strathmore administration. Is that still council's wishes? If it is, could we have a motion with that direction, please? There's nothing in the agenda. It's 3.1 B is the agenda item. Follow up to intercouncil meeting with town of Strathmore. At that meeting, the councillors had discussed perhaps putting it in administration's court to meet with the administration of the town of Strathmore and just see if there are ways that we can either collaborate in different departments or find efficiencies between our two municipalities. Given that we don't have an ICF and an IDP, we thought it might be good to direct administration to look at some of those, seeing how we won't be looking at, you know, collaboration through an ICF or that type of thing.
Okay, I'm going to go over some plowed ground. Anyways, so that's just with Strathmore. It's got nothing to do with the other three municipalities?
Please.
So subsequent to Reeve Link's information on the meeting, I've set up a regional CAOs meeting on May 10th to go through all our projects, which we do every year, which the town of Strathmore attends every year, and give the opportunity for them to work with us on bidding and things like that. They've never taken us up on the offer, as the villages have. So the village CAOs would be there, so all would participate. And I've also set up a meeting for next, on the 23rd, which I think is next Tuesday, with the CAO from the town of Strathmore. Unfortunately, he's only given me an hour of his time, so I may not be able to get through a lot of the stuff. But at least it'll be another discussion. We meet regularly, probably on a quarterly basis. I meet with the town of Strathmore CAO. So just so you know, so no motion is required. I think I understand what needs to be done. As long as the town of Strathmore is willing to work with us. Maybe when we go in camera, I can tell you a little bit of what I've heard about what's going on there. So thank you.
So when you're having this meeting with the CAOs for the four different municipalities, the 3 villages in the town, not the issue around the discussions with, that we've had with Strathmore and that we have met with them and that we are dealing with them somewhat differently than we are with the rest of them? Or is
The regional CAO meeting, they're all invited. Unfortunately, not always everybody can attend, so sometimes I follow up with individual CAOs, see if we can move forward on that. So.
okay.
And I've talked to other counselors from other villages in the area, and they don't mind. They meet, as they've told me, they've met together without us. So they don't have an issue, us meeting with Strathmore.
And I'd like to add too that because Strathmore's in that Calgary zone, we're not required to do an IDP and ICF. Otherwise, we would be having these conversations mandated by the province. So I think it's just kind of closes that loop as well, because we're having individual ones with everybody as it is. So.
Excellent. Thanks for that discussion. I see that our 9:30 appointment is here, Mrs. M. Field, regarding the Community Enhancement Regional Board. Welcome.
Just, can we do items 3.2A, B, C, D, and then it'll go into the
Sure.
other projects?
Yep.
If you don't mind.
Sorry, Mrs. Field, if you could just wait just a couple of moments. For C, we have the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board.
Sorry, I meant items 3.2, B, C, D.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
We want to look at 3.2A as well, Alan, like A through E.
A is actually the outdoor rink lighting. Yes, please, yes. Because they all kind of tie into the curb funding.
Okay.
Because the intent of these are on county lands, and they've applied for curb funding, so we would like to discuss those first. And then if council's still okay with it, that would ensure that the curb funding would make sense. Okay?
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. So these curb-funded projects were applied through curb, so they're on county land. So we just wanted to give council kind of some of the logistics around each of the requests, so we make sure we can, the council supports them before the funding gets approved, basically. So the first one on the agenda is outdoor rinks lights for the Carsland Rink, and this is applied through the Superior Grass Community Association. There's also a letter of support that the Lions are going to donate $3,500 towards that project as well. So that is the first curb project. So we're just looking for council to approve the placement of the lights for this outdoor rink and the location to be determined by the community groups and administration.
Any questions?
These requests, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 requests, have nothing to do with the other curb that Marcy's bringing forward?
They're all part of that.
Yeah, all these projects are on county land, so they're all.
I realize that. I realize that. I'm just saying that that doesn't change the proposal that Marcy's bringing forward as far as dollars.
Yes, they've all asked for curb funding.
Our portion of the curb funding that's on the
portion of it.
municipal side, that doesn't affect the other side. Just where I'm coming from, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a feeling that there was some double dipping trying to get in 2 different requests for the same process.
No, these are all just curb funded requests, so just to make sure the council is okay with the fund or the request before approving the funding, so it's not not double dipping at all.
Trying to figure out, there's got to be, sorry about this. I have not been able to put develop this thought process but this is all on our land, so, and this is all affecting our ratepayers. I mean, so would we not look at this as sort of like it's a park that, you know, like, we're expecting our ratepayers to come with hat in hand to get something, and they file through all the reports. I understand where I cannot, in my mind, figure out how we can say that the people in Carthland and Speargrass are on the same stand, as the same ground as the municipalities, as Rocky Ford and Standard. I mean, Rocky Ford and Standard are not our ratepayers. These people are all our ratepayers. They pay taxes into the county, and yet we expect them. So, I mean, this is a way bigger conversation than can be had here. But we have to. Somebody has to help me and figure out how we start this conversation, because our hamlets should not have to do the same things that everybody else does. I just don't. I think that's wrong. It's not. It's not fair to our ratepayers. I mean, I don't think anybody has any money, has any problems with paying out giving them, allowing access to these monies, but to expect, it just doesn't seem right to me that our hamlets have to go through the exact same hoops that the other municipalities do. So I'm like, this is not the right time, and I understand that, but we have to schedule that, and we have to have this conversation.
Through the chair, are you confusing this program with the CRIS program? That's the one that the other municipalities get. This one, the other municipalities aren't eligible for this program. Groups within there, our rural groups that work in those hamlets are eligible for it, but the villages themselves cannot apply for this grant.
There are groups that are outside the. There are groups that get this funding that are like in other municipalities, though, right?
For the curb funding, those are groups that are municipal groups that operate in another municipality, but the municipality can't apply for this grant. The clubs, as long as they're rural clubs, like the ag societies, which are run by the rural associations, they're not run by the villages. The ball clubs, whatever the clubs are that are applying for these are not, they're rural associations that use the cities, they're the villages for the buildings and that type of stuff, but it's the rural residents that are applying for this. It's not the urban residents that are applying for this. So our hamlets are doing the same thing as our rural residents. They're applying for the, right? Group within Carthland, whatever, they're applying the same as the other ones for the curb funding.
Like, for example, we fund the Strathmore Gymnastics Club through CURB in Strathmore. Now, because we have residents, ratepayers that belong to that. So, I mean, sorry.
If I may, I think what Tom is saying is that this process has already been in place, and but I think what you're asking is for a future conversation around recreation and how we fund that in the county. Historically, my understanding is it has been exclusively through CURB and CRIS, any projects in, whether it's in the county of Wheatland or our adjacent municipalities by one of the user groups. And I agree with you. I think just because that's how it was done historically, there is some merit to that. I think Deputy Reeve Kester has talked about some of the advantages of doing it that way. you have community buy-in, they're planning it, you know, all of that type of thing. But I think there is that larger question of what kind of services do we want to look at in terms of recreation, parks, those types of things. So let's kind of table that for maybe a planning and priorities meeting in the future. We can have some of that conversation. For now, because this process was in place and we have groups that have gone through the application process, let's look at them within the current context. And then if we want to look at it for in the future, we can have some council discussion regarding that. Is everybody?
Just to further that, this question to Alan, then, so some of that curb funding is held back specifically for this reason, is it not? No, it's all in the one pot?
It's all put into the mix, and then the curb board decides on discussion, and they make a decision on how that gets funded. They don't intentionally hold money back, no.
And the funds that we raise, not the funds they have, this funding that we're talking about right now, is that coming out of the curb funding?
These projects are curb funded. That's why it says curb rate on there. Yeah.
If we approve all of these, how does that affect the funding is this group aware of this? When they're making their decision?
Yes, they are, because, yeah, Dave can speak to that. Yes, they are aware that it's going to come here first, because it's on county land. So we have to approve the projects before they can be funded.
So these are only being brought forward separately because of being on our land, so that we have an opportunity to discuss that, because we have had some issues previously with facilities on county land. So I think that's why you're highlighting it to us. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, and provide all the information about around if there's costs involved or what the process is, just so council is aware of the project and before they approve the funding, because there's no sense approving the funding if they don't, if council's not going to approve the project, I guess is the.
I just have a comment. I find it a little frustrating that they're asking for lights when they don't even have a usable arena right now.
So if the arena doesn't go through, they'll do the same as they did last year and have it on what they call it, the snowbank. They won't have any boards, and they'll just flood like they did last year. And they'll have lights there so they can use it at night. They'll be automated, so they'll turn off at a certain time. It's just for safety and to use it at night.
I'll make a motion that council approve the placements of lights at the Carsland on county land at the outdoor skating rink and Carsland in locations to be determined by the community groups and administration.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The next project was the Carsland Lines community sign.
Yes, this sign was on the fire hall, and it's no longer serviceable, so they're just looking for curb funding to replace that sign. They haven't determined a location yet, so this is just to have the community group work with administration to determine that location.
I need to add that it would be on county land, likely, so that's why this is a request coming to the council. And likely it would be one of the locations is the, and it's only one of the locations, not totally decided yet, would be the new fire hall on that property, which is great off the highway, so.
Council's wishes?
I'd like to move that the council support the Cars on Lines community sign project to have the sign placed in the county land in the location determined by the community group and administration.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. The next project is the Rosebud Community Beautification.
This is, it's just an addition to what they've already been doing kind of thing, so it'll be on county land, so it's just a few flower pots for the area.
Council's wishes.
I'll move the request be accepted.
Ben's made a motion to support. Any further questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. Next project is a fire pit and gathering space in Speargrass.
It's just on one of the green spaces in Speargrass for this fire pit and gathering area. So just working with staff again, or administration again.
I'll move that council approve the installation of a fire pit as per request for decision.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. The final project is the metal flags on light poles for Speargrass.
This one's just a laser cut metal flags they want to put on the light posts. So there's a few things that need to happen. Now, one, we recommend that the design proof come back to council just so they are aware of what those signs are going to look like before they have them made. So there's the support of the project, the design proof to come back for council for approval if they desire. And then the Speargrass Community Association work with administration to determine safe locations and secure consent from Fortis and make sure that they meet specifications and standards.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve the installation of metal flags on the light poles in Speargrass.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, Dave. Welcome. So we'll move to 3.3A is where the information for this is. Good morning.
Good morning.
If you want to just push the,
Oh, sorry.
there you go. And if you can just state your name for the record.
Okay, I'm Marcy Field, and I am here as in the position of chairperson for the Community Enhancement Regional Board. It's been a real privilege, Madam Reeve and councillors, to be able to serve on this board since its inception, and we are very delighted to be able to move forward and bring these recommendations to you. And I really appreciate the first part of the process that went on here. I appreciate how you're looking at it and the opportunity to sit in and hear your discussion. Annually, the Wheatland County Community Enhancement Regional Board, CURB, meets to review, evaluate, prioritize, and decide the distribution of funding set aside in the Community Enhancement Reserve. This program began in 2012 and to date has contributed $3,227,455.09 for the enhancement and betterment of Wheatland County. Applications from nonprofit organizations within the county were accepted in January 2019, and the board met on February 27th and March 7th, 2019 to review these applications. Board members assembled to undertake the task of reviewing 58 applications, including a total request for funds of $838,005.37. From the 58 applications, the committee is recommending funding for 49 applications totaling $381,166.19. 9 community enhancement grant applications are being proposed to be declined. The board respectfully submits the attached recommendations to Wheatland County Council for consideration of the 2019 community enhancement grant funding. The board has followed its guidelines in making these recommendations and extends its appreciation and thanks to County Council for the opportunity to be part of this community enhancement initiative. Any questions?
Just to jump down to 2019-27 Strathmore Handy Bus Association. Do you know the reserves they're sitting on? Question.
I cannot answer that question because I do not know.
I sit on the board. They sit on $436,000 for reserves. I don't think the $8,000 is necessary. So, and I sit on the board, and we've already discussed this, and I've. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking. I would be asking to have discussion on that item to start with.
Just a question too. We've come up with some stuff that, some skating projects that have been funded in the past, and then we have staff that come in after, and it wasn't, maybe we should have spent it more wisely. I guess some of these projects, if they're reviewed by staff, so we're not committing to something that's going to be rebuilt shortly, if that makes sense. Like Cheadle, like, you know, if it's instead of funding a project for 20,000, say we put it off and have to do a, you know, spend more money more wisely in some areas, because we've seen that in the past. I don't know if that's something the board considers, or if we want to go down that road, so.
One of the things that I've observed is some communities do very well at working together and working with the county on future projects, and others are more individual projects that might not have that long-term kind of vision. I think, however, collectively that we could develop a plan that might help with that would be good. And the board is always very welcome if there's special guidance that council wants to provide us and information that they want us to look at when we're considering it. Perhaps like the reserves, that it would be good information. This year we had a discussion and there will be further changes made to the applications for when people are applying for next year, where we're asking for more information to come forward. When we initially started, the plan was to make it as simple as possible for people to receive these funds and to be able to do it, because there was quite a lengthy process that we had heard in the initial consultation period of people having to report back. And when the CURB initiative was put in place, it was to try and keep it as simple as possible. And what is our part in doing that? So we've worked on the premise of being as simple as possible and what we can do to aid the community members.
Thank you.
I had a question, Marcy, on Level Land Community Hall. I'm sorry, I don't know where that is or what that is.
We're pretty excited because Level Land's come forward. And my understanding is they're way up in the northwest quarter someplace. This is one of our discussions, is we'd like to go out and see where it is and to see the projects that are there. But it is further north up that way. And one of the councillors here probably, like, that'll lie within their district. They could probably address your question better than I can, because I haven't been there yet.
I'm pretty sure it's in Glenn's area, north of, yeah, yeah.
Any further questions or discussion?
And Alan, if I want something removed, do I just remove it? Okay. I would move that we remove Strathmore Handy Bus Association operating funds, 8,000 from CURB funding.
Any questions or discussion?
So Marcy, while you're there, what would, if that goes back into your fund, what do you do with that? Do you just held to the next year?
It's held until next year, and it'll be part of the reserves. Just similar to some of the other funding that comes forward, if any of the groups do not use the funds in that given year, they have two options. One option is that they can ask for an extension from the board, and the second option is that it has to be returned. So if they're if the amount of money that they required goes over, or if they've asked for multiple projects, they can't move their curb funding around to different projects. It can only be used for that. So say they want to buy a fridge and they've asked for $3,500 and the fridge costs $3,000. If they can only supply us with a receipt for $3,000, they have to return the $500, and that is then allocated to the next year.
Through the chair, a friendly amendment to Councillor Wilson's motion. The motion is just to pull that operating fund out of there. Would you put a reason with that so that when it goes out there, they understand why?
Yeah, due to a large amount of reserves.
Just one question, not being as familiar with their operations. Are their reserves restricted, and will taking this out affect their operations? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion regarding the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. There's nothing else that we would like to exclude. We also require a motion to approve the curb grant funding as recommended by the board.
I'll move the
With the-
remainder of
with
the
the
funding.
With the amendment? Sorry, as amended.
As amended.
Any further questions or discussion regarding the curb funding? Ben has a motion on the floor. All in favor? Motion is approved. Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
And we
coming
look
in. We
forward to
appreciate it.
hearing any recommendations or things you'd like us to look at.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Which is fair. Which is fair.
Yeah, like a new vehicle or something. I wasn't sure if they'd have it restricted for that. Really quickly, just let's look at advocacy topics. So the advocacy board had our inaugural meeting, and we are requesting that each council identify their top priorities for advocacy. So I'm looking for direction. We are at 3.1C, and there isn't anything in the package. So it's just a request from the chief officer.
I think as Wheatland County, we should be advocating as strong as possible for ag land and the protection of it within the regional partnership.
So just for some context for this, so we're looking at things, because this advocacy committee will be representing the entire CMRB. Not saying that this still doesn't apply, but just for some context. It will have to be something that all 10 municipalities can somewhat agree on. We thought it would be relatively easy, and it turned out very challenging for even the 4 representatives that are on the advocacy committee board to agree on topics that we agreed on, both the perspective we would advocate for and the topic. So I'll just list some that were discussed at our meeting. So there was Calgary is looking for advocacy for compensation for fire response to medical calls from AHS. They pointed us to their YYC Matters list for the election. Ambulance was a relatively common one, although some of the municipalities were less concerned with that. Somebody wanted us to be advocating for mortgage rules, flooding, water supply, particularly reuse, provincial highway funding, transit, infrastructure funding, renewable energy regulations, economic development, tourism, cannabis, and the direction cannabis was taking kind of differed between the urban and the rurals. One perspective was on the revenue sharing formula to cover costs for things like enforcement, and one was more in terms of taxation on the actual development of cannabis production facilities. So as well, broadband capacity, those were the main things that were discussed. And out of, sorry?
Downstream pollution, yes.
Yep, we will need all 10 municipalities to, or at least the 4 representatives, which are Okotoks, Foothills, Calgary, and our.
I have a question to Councillor Wilson. When you say to put in there the advocacy for agriculture, and I agree with you, but when you look at our portion of the Calgary Metropolitan Plan, we're not advocating very hard in there for agricultural, because it's all industrial and so are you just talking about that area, or are you talking about it as a whole throughout the whole?
I'm looking at it as a partnership, as we should be, and there's ag land surrounding the city that is going to be eaten up when they should be going up and meeting their own recommendation on density population. But they don't, because, yeah, I'll just stop.
Yeah, well, I guess where I'm coming from is the argument comes back at us because the area that we have in that does not look like we're advocating for ag.
There are 3 farmers out there that farm in excess of 50,000 acres.
Yeah, I realize that. That's going to stay, but I understand that. As long as we're comfortable with it, and we can argue
I agree with what you're saying, Jason. I understand some of the partners, but Rocky View's not at the advocacy.
No, but they will be consulted on topics.
So I think some of our other partners would support it. Of course, the big centers won't because they want to use this as a land bank. The biggest one for me is the water reuse within our area, because we're dealing with the stormwater and dealing with like WID and whatnot, and trying to get the standards changed.
And that was tabled. It was indicated we will not be pursuing advocacy on that topic because it would be, the committee determined that it was reasonable to wait on what comes out from the province. They've already undertaken a consultation regarding that and are supposed to be coming out with a new report. There are concerns that the report will be no different than previous reports, but the committee determined they wanted to wait to see what the kind of newest regulations would be that are coming out. That's also why it's kind of on a tabled topic list for the CMRB as a whole, because it's been identified as important and a priority, but because the province is already working on it. Just one quick question back to your agricultural preservation, because one thing that I hear from landowners is that they do not, like our egg producers, don't necessarily support this kind of top-down forced egg preservation where they lose their autonomy to do subdivision or, develop on their land, that type of thing. So one of the challenges the advocacy committee identified is figuring out specifically what we want to advocate for and who we are advocating for regarding that issue. So if you could elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I hear the same issues, but I also hear the opposite. And I think it is finding that balance. And when we're dealing with the big cities, we have to at least make them aware of it. By no means are you you're not going against somebody's right to do the one thing, but when you have your population density growing and sprawling across miles and miles, when you can have that same density go up, it's not so much restricting a person's right to do whatever they want with their land, but it's smarter planning, in my opinion. It's having your density there, all your amenities there, closer. I'd be looking at it like that, and still having your designated green space or farmland.
So the other kind of element to consider with this is we're trying to avoid replicating work that's being done within the CMRB as a whole. And that's going to be a huge part of the focus for the planning and for the like the documents that the CMRB are creating over the next couple of years. That's, I mean, densities, all of those types of things. That's the main work that we're going to be working on the next 2 years. So I agree with you that that's critical, but we're looking more at things where we would be lobbying, say, provincially or federally to other levels of government rather than kind of between governments within the municipalities, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I think what you're talking about needs to happen at the CMRB, but not necessarily as work for the advocacy committee, unless you're suggesting we start lobbying the province for some kind of like provincial regulations regarding those types of things, which I don't think my ratepayers would not be in favor of.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
So that part of the challenge is we are trying to find things that are outside of the current work, the current scope of what the CMRB is working on, and look outside that.
So since we're modeled after the capital region, what is the advocacy group managed to agree on up in Edmonton?
So they created this 3-year advocacy and communications plan. Theirs started in 2016. It's incredibly thorough, and I believe that we will be basing a lot of our work off of this. They've identified engagement priorities and sort of what level of government they would be, external government they would be working with, starting at the Premier's office, going to the ministers' offices, deputy ministers, Edmonton Metropolitan Region, MLAs, media, stakeholders, regional Aboriginal interests, special interest groups, AUMA, and it goes on and on. Second level is they have a federal focus. In terms of their strategic priorities, the goal number 1 was to ensure advocacy and communication efforts are well planned, coordinated, and supported across the organization. Position the Capital Region Board as a relevant and important leader in the development and championing of plans, programs, and policies that benefit the Capital Region. Goal 3 was ensure Capital Region Board's advocacy and communications activities add value to the organization. I'm just seeing. So my understanding is what a lot of their, I'm just trying to find where they were more focused on like housing. I'm just trying to find that particular list. Affordable housing was a big focus in March of 16. So they've also documented like the date and who they've contacted and who they're advocating with, and but a lot of their topics didn't necessarily resonate with the Calgary board. Affordable housing was big. Energy corridor, of course, you have a lot of the Sturgeon and Strathcona County and those types of, which we have a little bit less of, although oil industry could certainly, like the energy industry could certainly be an area. A lot of it's around energy, economic development. Yeah, housing is like repeatedly addressed. So what we did determine at the advocacy board is that our first advocacy would be towards the newly elected MLAs and maybe doing some kind of caucus meeting for all of the MLAs in that area for the growth region, bring them together, have some discussion, address sort of what our key issues are with them. That's going to be our first project. Some of them are around
Money.
sustainable funding. Yeah,
It's all
that
money.
was identified, was sustainable funding even for the CMRB, making sure that all of our MLAs are aware of that we were basically mandated into this by the province and that we would expect that funding would be continuous and consistent. Yeah, I believe there was a number of them discussed at the meeting, so. If council doesn't have anything further, like beyond the ones that I did list, you can think about it, and if you come up with anything, you can email me. I know previously in our municipality, ambulance had been highlighted. from both the Woodemza Board and from our municipal partners through Wheeland Regional Partnership. And as well, broadband, I think, was one of the initial topics that had been submitted for consideration for this work.
I don't know if this would be something, but the Highway 1 corridor, we've talked about access to overpasses, things like that. There's always talk about, but there's never a timeline as to what it has to be done to kind of nail that down. Because it's always, whenever we talk about doing growth in the area, there's a threat of, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. To set that into a firm go, no-go would give us great guidance as to what we can do. I think that affects Chestermere, it affects Rocky View.
And again, I think, but administration can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's being addressed through those transportation studies and analyzing kind of like they're doing that east corridor, as well as I think they just did the south, right?
Yeah, the layout of those is being addressed, but I think what Councillor Clausen's identifying is that there needs to be advocacy to fund those projects and get a firm timeline on it, I think, is what you're asking, right?
For sure, once all that work is done, prioritized, how are we gonna fund it? And then, if there's some realignments possibly on our side, might be cheaper, like there's some of that's gonna take some lobbying and advocacy to get that through. There are some good ideas out there, but those ideas have to be presented in a different format than, you know what I'm saying?
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because there's some really good things that we could do, but it's gonna take that process to get it going that way.
Perfect. I've added that to my list. I suspect it may get sort of tabled just because it is, they're trying to avoid things that are currently being addressed within the plans that are being created. And I realize yours is separate, but it's somewhat related.
It is, and it's going to take some discussions before those transportation plans are mostly driven by the bigger urban centers.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about is more affects all of us because it's a corridor and how to make it the right way, I guess would be to say. And it would take, I think that's a good thing for them, for you guys to work on.
I will certainly present it.
I think we'd be remiss not to have the advocacy group working for environment, water and air pollution. And if the city of Calgary doesn't want to participate in that, they'd better tell the residents they don't want clean water and clean air. Because I think they better reconsider that.
In regards to that, I would say the waste streams too. Where it's going, because it's going to our rural areas. And we may not necessarily like that. Maybe there's better opportunities or they have to spend more money to do it a better way.
Excellent. Any other topics you'd like me to bring forward? Sorry? We actually didn't discuss policing.
Because the original items that were on there was Alberta Health Services ambulance provisions.
Yep.
And policing, and there was one other one, I think you already mentioned it. But
Broadband.
Broadband, that's correct, yeah. So I think policing's still a challenge everywhere, I think. Maybe not Calgary, maybe they don't see it as a challenge, but I think when I drive around Calgary, I think policing is a challenge in Calgary too. But.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I've added that.
Yeah, just because I think we're seeing it, the lack of members everywhere. Counties and municipalities having to hire their own. I think sufficient policing coming from the province would be nice for once.
Okay, I've added that to my list. Thank you. I'm sorry we're late for our 10 o'clock. Corporate and financial services. Yeah, do you guys need a break? We'll take a 5-minute break. Sorry, Brian. Good morning. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll look at 3.3B. Good morning.
Good morning, Council. So today I'm here to talk about the tax rate bylaw. So last week there was a presentation on assessment. Is there any further questions about the 2018 assessment that Council may have?
Apparently not.
Okay. And also council was provided 3 options for the tax rate bylaw. Has council had an opportunity to review those options? Is there any wish to have any hard copies provided? We provided electronic ones last week.
We're good with electronic, thank you.
Okay. So has council come to a decision on the options?
What's your preference, Jason? And I guess we'll see. Yeah, we do have actually a paper copy that was provided this morning.
Well, it's not my option, so I don't feel like I should.
Council's wishes. Maybe we just want to review. So essentially option 1 is are you ready?
I'm very happy with option 3.
Reducing all 3 mill rates. It's in the light pink on the second page.
Option A.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, you can also, if you refer to it as option A or 3, administration will understand. Yeah, yeah.
Barely. Are you making a motion to that, Jason? Okay. Other councilors' opinions? So Jason, you're in support of the light pink. Brian, from a long-term perspective, do you see any pros or cons to either of the 3 options?
Well, I think as the county grows and as expenses grow as well, I believe that option 1 would be best, a good strategy for the long term. As for a short term, I don't think there would be many consequences to choose any option here.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, I'll put one on the floor, and then you can fight that fight over it. I'll put option 1 on the floor.
Discussion? So that option includes a 1.55% change to the farm mill rate, a 2.04% increase to the non-residential rate, and a 1.82% reduction in the residential rate. Any discussion? There's a motion on the floor.
You know, I like number A3, but I worry about the next year to come. If we're going to have to, if expenses, if we were able to go 0 this time and no more than 2 the following year, that would be okay. But if we had to go 0 and then 4, I would worry about that. Cut harder? That's true.
Oh, there we go. Option 1 is based on inflation, correct? Like about 2% inflation. So I just pulled up the inflation rates over the last 10 years, and it's been below 2. I'll just go, 2018 was just about 2. It was 1.99. 17 was 1.8. 16 was 1.5, 1.6, 1.4, 1.2, 0.8, and then during 11-10 was 2.3, and then in 09 it was 1.3. So I'm just curious, and I could be completely out for lunch, but I was listening to 770, and they had a economist come in and say the problem that Calgary is facing right now is that they did plan on a 2% inflation increase every year, but when inflation isn't going up by 2% and it's going up by quite a bit less, quite a bit less, you're increasing spending that's not needed. So I think now's the time to get back to par and then go back to your 2%. And every so often you have to look at that and you have to match yourself back with inflation, because we've been doing 2% over the last 6 years, and we haven't over the last 7 years, and we haven't really hit 2%. Last year was the first time we hit 2%. So I mean, I think that's something to look
at. Yes, so through the chair. So through the chair, there is a couple of different places you can look. So if you're looking at CPI might not be the best to look at, especially over a 10-year average. So the county tax revenue over the last 3 years has gone up 1%, and that's not an average, that's just kind of it. So the county tax revenue has not gone up 2% annually. So this year, our assessment's gone up the most it has in 3 years, and our tax revenue is also going up the most it has in the last 2 years. There's also other expenditures that the county has incurred over the last year or so. Right, wrong, or indifferent, those are the IDP, ICF, and also the carbon tax. So The carbon tax itself alone has cost Wheatland County over the last 2 years compared to 16 to, well, 18, the actuals were about 170,000. And that's just an extra cost that we had that we didn't have to pay in previous years. The IDP, ICFs, I could go and take a look at the actuals on those, but I'm guessing those would be around 150,000. And those are also going to be the same in the next coming years as well. I know we do have an extension with rural municipalities for the some of those agreements, but that carbon tax, and unless I hear anything different, we're going to probably assume that it's still going to be an expenditure that the county has to face.
Yeah, the problem is those businesses are having to pay that too, and so are the people.
I mean, any of these options, no one's going to die on any of these options. But this is symbolic more than anything. I understand that. But we have to, I think we, as council, going forward, have to look more carefully at where we are going as a council, as where we're going at the county. I think we have to be more diligent. So I'm going with option 3.
And vote it down and go for someone else.
Philosophically, I support the third option as well, just because it is more consistently sharing, I guess, the tax advantage amongst all 3 mill rates. And not, I think we've discussed it, a lot of our services go towards our residential ratepayers, and to hold or to reduce that mill rate and increase our farm and our non-residential, I don't support that personally. Any further discussion or questions? Motion on the floor for option 1. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is lost.
I'll move option A, the third option.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Consideration for second reading.
I'll move second reading of option 3 or A.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
I'll move permission for third.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move third and final for option A, the pink one. 3A, pink.
Are there any questions or comments for third reading? All in favor? Motion is carried. And thank you to administration in both assessment and finance for all the work that you did on the budget and on the assessment. Thank you.
It's still pretty tough. I think I could strain that still. I do like the coffee here. I don't know why. What?
Good well water.
Like, I don't like scrap.
Checked or anything else.
Yeah.
I don't like Tim Hortons coffee. I don't like McDonald's coffee. I don't like any of it. Like, I'll make coffee at home and it's, you know.
We're going to move on to 3.1D. WDEM's a presentation to Wheatland County Council.
So WDEMSA, we had a board meeting, and it was asked through our council that WDEMSA come and speak on May 7th. But in lieu of that, the board decided that they would like Rob to go to the regional meeting on, forgot the date,
April 29th.
April 29th, and if Ben could add that to the agenda. And he will speak to this issue as a region, at a regional meeting.
Did you? I haven't. Alan, do we require a motion for that?
You don't require a motion to put it on the agenda. Unfortunately, the agenda is full. The only time.
For the 23rd?
For the meeting on the
29th?
29th is full. So unless everybody's in agreement, you want to go till 10 o'clock, I can get them on at 9. We've got an appointment at 7 and one at 8. So
Which are those appointments?
the Regional Emergency Management Plan is at 7, and at 8 is the, I have to pull up the agenda. Pat Fuel had made a request. Yeah. So though, yeah, he put a couple items on there, actually. I can put it on at 9, but I just don't know. Typically, that wraps up by 9 or 9:30, so.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why they don't want to come to council and?
They wanted, the board felt that they wanted to talk to all the partners at the same time. And it was voted on there.
Councillor Eichert had asked for more information, so the only way the administration felt we could give more information is to have them come in. And Red Deer Dispatch is welcome to come in that day too and do his dispatch, and then you can see what $2.35 service from Red Deer Dispatch would be comparable with DEMS at $8. So I would defer that to Councillor Eichert. If he's okay with that, we can cancel those appointments on May 7th. I know our staff have rearranged those 3 times now, so if that's suitable to you, no problem, but I don't know what you're going to compare it to because you don't have a comparison, because you'd ask for more information. So I can't give you any more information than what the costs are unless we have the individuals come in and speak to each one of the service providers.
On the 29th?
On the 7th.
I don't have a problem with it on the 29th. My concern is that by 9 o'clock, are you going to have everybody there? Are they going to start leaving on you? They're not, or are they going to want to? How long is the presentation?
I don't know. But what about, like, it was on the 29th, but what about putting it towards the May, or, well, they wanted it as soon as possible, but putting it on the
We have
next one.
policing. Is that the other appointment, Alan? At 8 p.m., I think policing.
That's right, yeah.
So
I think they wanted to talk to all the partners, plus all the counselors would be there.
If I may, they can't do both. Like, I can understand why they want to talk to the regional, but the intention was, at least for our council, I believe when it was done, was to just see what was out there, comparing everything to everything, and I don't think there's any harm in that. And I understand why they want to talk to all the partners, but
can they, what would happen if they moved it to our MPC, which is on, is that the 14th
sure.
of May? There'll be time then and invite the other partners in.
Oh, I see what you're saying, after MPC, just
After
do
MPC.
for that specific issue.
I just don't know if all them could make it then either, all the counselors, right, on the MPC?
This council.
No, but he wanted to talk to all the They wanted to have a frank discussion with all the partners together.
That's what I'm saying. You're not sure you're going to get all the councillors there on the 29th anyways, but if we do it after the MPC, if they have enough notice, at least their member for Redemza can be invite them in here to do the presentation, then their member from Redemza is at least.
So what if we instructed staff to ask all the other partners if they would either like to go late on the 29th or come to MPC?
Just a further question about the agenda. We expect the Wheatland Regional Emergency Management Plan will take an hour. Do we think policing will take a full hour? Yeah. Okay.
Or what about coming in a half hour early for that meeting? Because it's, yeah, or it's 7, I think, is usually the start time. It's 6:30 or something. I'd be willing to start early, too. That's not a big deal.
Try one more time. One more time.
Oh, here.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Oh, no, I lost my, yes.
I know why it does.
Sorry, yes, I think that would work good if we could make sure that everybody knew about that, yeah.
I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think it's out of our council's purview to ask for a one-on-one presentation.
But is the board? The board is, Rob is a staff of the board. So that's what the board wanted. So we'd have to go back to another meeting, which is not till next month, to okay him to come to, kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's how they felt about it as the partners. Well, I don't know how long his,
Because there's nothing stopping us from at council still having presentations from somebody out, from other providers, if they're not. And then we can get the information on everybody can get the information as a group from Wedemza, and we can still have from other providers, I guess, keep it going. If that's the board's decision not to have them come to council, that's fine.
I think they just wanted it rather in lieu of that,
Yeah.
to have it as a partnership.
So council's wishes are leave it at May 7th or not? Councilor Eichert wanted more information, so it's up, I guess it's kind of your call on this.
Well, I've got no problem. I think I can process information given at different times, so if you've got the other guys coming in, bring them on in, and, you know, if they're not all there, and then the DEMSA decides that they want to talk to us, or we can arrange a meeting for them, then we'll do it.
So do we want to try to fit them in on the 29th? Can we ask the partners?
I guess my problem is, from what I'm hearing, and I don't know what the discussion is going to be, but if it's an urgent discussion, it's going to be more than half an hour. The presentation is going to be 10, 15 minutes. And if it's something serious, you're going to need more than 10 minutes to discuss it. So you're going to be running into 10 o'clock before you get out of there. That's my concern. And whether the other ones will stay that long, or if you lose half of them before that time, that's, doesn't matter to me.
The only other thing that I could suggest is May 7th, they both confirmed that they were available. So could move forward with that, and it's an open meeting. It's a public meeting, so any one of the councils can be there. I know that Strathmore wanted to attend. Some of their councillors wanted to attend the May 7th, so. I'm hearing from Councillor Eichert that he would like to hear from them on the 7th, at least whoever shows up. So, and if one shows up on the 29th and one on the 7th, you're okay with that? You can take notes. And, okay.
Yeah, so I believe there was a conflict anyway for May 7th. I think there was a conflict for May 7th for Rob? No.
Yeah, and from what I heard from Rob, he was just presented with one date from our administration, and it didn't work.
That's not correct. He was
I
actually asked.
just said that's what Rob
He was
had told
actually
me.
asked to come in, and I can get Stuart to come in because Stuart talked to him. I believe in February, and I believe in March, and he confirmed those dates and then changed those dates. So if council wants that information, I can ask Stuart to come in. This is the third time I believe we've moved the dates.
We'll have to look into that. For what Deputy Reeve Kester had indicated to me regarding this was because Wademza is a regional dispatch system, that he felt that, and I'm just going to say this because he's not here to say it himself, he felt it was imperative that the partnership does hear from Wademza because decisions made here affect our municipal partners. So just sharing that on behalf of Deputy Reeve Kester.
So you want to make a motion in regards to having Rob come in on the 29th? And is he available to attend?
To the regional partnership? Oh. Okay. Well, I'd like a motion then that the, Rob be able to speak at the regional partnership meeting, 29th.
Well, along with that, I guess we just have administration send a notice out to the CAOs or councils that the meeting may go till 10 o'clock because of a late addition. That we're going to discuss it. If they come on at 9, and we're not saying the other isn't, we may not get done by 9 o'clock. If we don't get done the regular by 9:15, then it's that much later. So just to let them know that the meeting may go till 10 o'clock because of a late addition.
And can we start it earlier?
As long as everybody knows it's starting
Yeah.
early. That's,
Would we be okay with asking it to start at 6:30 rather than 7? Council?
I just worry that if it's added on, maybe it should, out of respect for the people that are scheduled to come at 7, that they definitely start at 7. It would be better to add it on at the end.
I wasn't talking about changing any appointments, but if there's any, you do your community updates and everything before all your appointments, so you're not pushed. Yeah.
so I don't have an issue with any of that. But if we get kickback from some of the other partners for the time, what do we do then? I guess if we send it out and they say, well, we can't make it for that, I'm just assuming that they will, but I don't know. But if they say they have other, I don't know what their commitments are for 9 o'clock. Send it out and see what they say.
Library.
All in favor? Carried. We will move on to the RFD for library funding.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm just going to make the motion that council direct staff to forward contributions totaling $45,765 to the libraries located within the Wheatland County as indicated in the request for decision, subject to continuity operation as a library in 2019. Further, that the contributions be funded from the library reserve.
Questions or discussion regarding the motion?
A lot of money.
A lot of readers, 1,851 card holders in our municipality.
That's 1/8.
Just a question, has there been a growth or a reduction in the amount of libraries in the last 5 years or so, or 10 years?
It's
Or is it-
21%.
We know? A change in the amount of libraries, or has it always been just funding the same?
My understanding, the only reduction is Hazar had a library within the school, and when the school closed, it went to a book drop kind of system with access to the other libraries and book delivery through their remote delivery system. That's my understanding of the only kind of recent
So the
changes.
libraries are the same. Like Reeve Lake said, the only thing is the one has gone from a standalone library in the school to a book depository system, a book locker, I think they call it.
Yeah.
But it still provides the same service.
And my other question would be, Marigold, we also participate with them. Do they provide the exact same service in each municipality?
So I was going to include as part of my report, because Councillor Wilson had requested information regarding the Marigold services. I do have it with me, but I didn't have a chance to get it to you prior to this agenda package being circulated. But Marigold did just complete their 2018 kind of return on investment reports, and I'll be bringing those with my report to the first meeting in May. I also got a copy of their Marigold Library System Financial Accountability Explained, and the treasurer and the vice president of the board did come, or did offer to come as well, just to discuss the fiscal responsibility at Marigold, if council would like to hear from them.
I'm just curious if we're doing a duplication of service in some of these.
It's not a duplication of service at all. So this is a grant that comes from the Community Enhancement Board Fund to the actual libraries. And then the Marigold system provides the regional services. They are different services. And this goes, from my understanding, towards the operations of each of the libraries that serve our ratepayers in our municipality. And then Marigold provides, like, I'll just read some of the things: IT capacity fund, materials and digital content collection services, professional consultation, training for members, delivery service, administrative costs, purchasing program, insurance and services and programs, as well as communication and marketing support. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Oh, motion is lost.
Wow. It's a good day today.
We'll see about that. Okay. We'll move on to the Open Space Rec and Culture Master Plan.
Madam Chair, in the agenda package is the draft terms of reference for the Open Space and Recreation Culture Master Plan. As council is aware, we don't have a 10-year master plan to plan out facilities and recreation and that. So this is the kind of the first step with council's input on this terms of reference, and then from the terms of reference, staff can develop an RFP process and select a consultant to help us with the master plan.
Excellent. Any questions or comments?
Just a question, being that we're kind of new going down this road, is this something that we could maybe do in-house? I don't know if we got that much that we have. We're not like a Strathmore or something like that, where it's got small stuff out there. I mean, we're looking, I think council, well, at least I would be looking for recommendations of what we have currently. Start out small instead of starting out with a big, huge document. That's just my own personal thing.
It certainly can be done in-house. I think we have the capability to do that. It just may mean some other projects may get delayed, and it may take us a little bit longer than outside. I don't know, Dave, maybe you can speak to a little bit more of your experience on it.
Yeah, that's an opportunity to do that. It might take a little bit longer, obviously. Maybe we can just use a consultant for maybe the culture part of it, maybe some of the like smaller components of it. But yeah, there's something we could definitely work with if that's council's desire.
My thoughts behind this is like, we have the curb funding, we have some groups out there that are looking at this kind of thing that get the lots. So, and there's some that is rec as well, and some, and community enhancement, beautification. So maybe that, we have some people that have already kind of done this, and yourself, and myself, I'm not looking for a big, huge plan right away. I'm looking for something to stage up, you know, because I don't want a budget to go from 0 to $1 million in a year, my own person. So that's where I'm coming from.
So, Madam Chair, I mean, if council wishes, you can make a motion that we bring back a terms of reference to do it in-house and how that would look in comparison to this. This was the original direction, is to look at the full-blown plan, and thought this would be the most effective way, but we could certainly do a revised terms of reference if that's what council would like.
Yeah, I like that, the fact that I think we're going to be able to piggyback a lot about what Strathmore's doing, because I think we sort of know, you know, all this recreation is going to be driven by growth. Like, if we don't have any more growth, you're not going to have any, you'll require no facilities, because
I'll make a motion that we look, see what the implications would be to do it in-house.
Yeah, just to have a conversation about that motion. I agree with it, but I talk about the implications. I would like to see the projects that could be withheld and affected by doing this in-house, because I mean, if we're choosing it because it's cheaper but not the most effective, that's a big issue too. So I just want to compare both and see the implications on the in-house. So.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
So both will be brought back.
Yeah, I was just thinking we could go to that. We'll welcome Mr. Jay Hayden, the chair of Rosebud School of the Arts. If you want to just come to the podium and use the microphone and just state your name for the record, sir.
Madam Reed, do you mind if I sit for this?
Certainly, that's totally fine. Okay. Mackenzie, is there a microphone there? Okay.
There we go.
Good morning.
Technology. Good morning. First of all, thank you very much for giving me a moment to sit and visit with your council. My intention today is to bring you up to date on the goings-on with respect to Rosebud School of the Arts and Rosebud Theatre, and some of the challenges and interesting things that we're facing. To serve as a bit of an introduction, I've been on the Rosebud board for, I think, about 3 years or 4 years. I was a patron of Rosebud for a number of years, and I served as the Minister of Infrastructure for the province at the time that the Mercantile went in, and worked closely, and Glenn, I believe it was Glenn's area that Rosebud's in. And so, and of course, had worked with Councillor Ben over the years. He and I started together back in, just after they started sharpening metal tools, and served as school trustees and councillors and whatnot back in the day. So, and I was president of your association for counties and MDs for a number of years. So I sat at this council table over a period of time. So that's just a little bit of background. I was here for your opening, and my name's likely on one of your cheesy plaques. So again, thank you. My interest in Rosebud, as I'd mentioned, has gone back an awful long way. And I know the support from your council has been good over the years, and I know that there's an appreciation at council level for the operation that's there. It's unique. Rosebud is very unique. It's actually covered by its own act. It's the only post-secondary arts institution in the province that is actually covered by its own act, which, as I'm sure your experience, for those of you that have been on council for a while, and you've probably been here long enough to know that the Municipal Government Act also controls an awful lot of what takes place with you folks, and it's a similar situation with us. We're controlled fairly closely, but most of it is because we're really unique, and I hope that you guys know how unique you are. While Old Sun College isn't technically in your municipality, you've got 2 post-secondary educations out in a rural and remote location, and that's a real oddity. And I think it's very important. So we both are facing some interesting things coming up in the future. And I wanted to make you aware that the arts community, but more so even the entertainment community in this province, with the downturn that's taken place in our economy, has been very severely affected. We've had a very difficult couple of years, and my position as chair of the board is, I guess it's been a year. It seems like about 5 with the issues that we've been dealing with. And we're no different than Theatre Calgary and some of the different ones. People have a limited number of disposable dollars right at the moment in our province, and they're very selective as to where they spend them. So we are now taking on a more aggressive marketing process. We're in the middle of an organizational audit and review, and we're going very deeply into it, along with the governance review. The governance, more or less, is set out and stipulated by the province because we're under our own act. We have to follow certain procedures as we go forward. The severity of the situation that we faced a year ago is pretty evident in that we wound up with $600,000 worth of debt, and we're an operation that's we're not huge, but we're $3 million. That's our annual budget, just over $3 million. So I still think of that as something that's fairly significant, and anybody that doesn't, please give me $3 million if it's not going to hurt. But we've been faced with difficulties with respect to patrons renewing their yearly subscriptions and things like that. I, at the moment, think that we've turned the corner. We had a successful season last year. We actually showed a surplus of $85,000 after everything was all said and done. The board has instructed the organization to budget to pay down the debt as quickly as possible. We're looking at a minimum of $100,000 a year we would like to pay down. Every now and again, we get some surprises, and glad to report to you guys that yesterday was one of those days that we got a surprise when one of our patrons and one of your residents, and we don't mention names in this stuff, but somebody that just sold the farm, and had been a patron for a long period of time, came in and gave us $200,000 to go towards the needs of Rosebud, which is pretty impressive. We're working with a past vice president of the Bank of Montreal, who's serving as our interim executive director at the moment, and working on fundraising, and we're hoping that we can, in fairly short order, wipe out that debt so that we can get going. The importance of this, of course, is multifaceted. Obviously, the educational opportunity. I don't know how many of you are aware, but Rosebud Theatre of the Arts is a faith-based education facility, which has limited some of our opportunities actually for fundraising. But at the same time, it's opened some doors to some pretty important donors. But it's very unique. In the past, I've worked in a number of areas, and one of the areas was I was an advisor to the Prime Minister on sustainable communities, rural and remote communities, and I served as an advisor to Paul Martin for 4 years and traveled the country, and this, easy. I never carried a Liberal card, which I think that you should find kind of interesting, that Paul Martin had one rural and remote advisor on his committee, and he picked a Conservative to do it, which I thought was interesting in that selection. And I got to travel across the country, and Rosebud is very unique, I have to tell you, and I'm sure many of you know that. There are not many hamlets and small communities that have a self-sustaining business industry or even educational opportunity within their boundaries. And I want council to know that I appreciate the kind of challenges you guys have got, especially with this upcoming wastewater situation that you face. You've got regulations through Alberta Environment that you have to meet. I know that you have an application, and I've spoken with some of your council members, and I know you've got an application in for that wastewater funding that gives you 90 cents for your 10. And I know that you're a long ways down the road on your plans. We also received a grant to do a sustainability study and look at a project in Rosebud, and we received a grant for $85,000. And our board are just going through the pros and cons of it, because we want to do the review on sustainability. We want to be a partner with you guys. We want to make sure that Rosebud is there for another 40 years, and that's about how long it's been there now. But everything hangs in the balance with our operation. The success of Rosebud Theatre will dictate whether Rosebud School of the Arts carries on or whether it doesn't. We're extremely unique. It's the only theatre, professional theatre, that I'm aware of in a rural or remote setting in Canada, in the entire nation, which makes it pretty special. Graduates of our school are appearing on stage all over the world. It's unbelievable. It's something that you have probably never gotten credit for as a municipality, to have such a gem in your area. You've made a contribution on a yearly basis, and I know everybody's sitting in their seat waiting for the ask, and you're not going to get one from me. That's not to say you won't get an ask. That's very possible, but you've contributed $5,000 annually to our budget of $3 million, and we appreciate what you've done. I signed every letter to our patrons that went out this year, and tried to make note of the different names that were on those lists, and wrote some personal notes to some of the people that are in there. And I think your council might be interested to know that probably, I'm going to say a good solid 30% of our patrons are from rural and remote locations. Many of them actually from our own area too, and I say Strathmore up to Drum that general area. We've got an awful lot of seasons ticket holders that are in that area. But we also have people that attend on an annual basis, not for every performance, but out of Peace River and Lethbridge. It's unbelievable where these folks are coming from. I've got a few of these, and I'll maybe give them to Councillor Armstrong just to fire them around. We had a successful season last year, and this year we got aggressive too on what our offerings are to try and make sure that we were filling the seats, because without the bums in the seats, as I'd mentioned earlier, we're in trouble. The first play that we've offered this year is off to a slow start, which is concerning us a little bit, because it's the Canadian debut of a play that was written by Steve Martin. And I've been to it already, and it's pretty cool. So if you guys get a chance, please go and attend. But we've got an aggressive lineup this year. And with that lineup, of course, comes expense, because with professional theater, it's not like our little community theaters where you pay a minimal amount in order to put a play on for a fundraiser. We pay the full whack, just like any other professional theater that's around. And we have actors from across the nation that take part in these plays. But I think we're off to a great start with the number of plays that we're putting on that are high quality. We're not off to a great start in the number of people that have come, so I know that we've got a challenge ahead of us again this year. I just wanted to have this conversation with council to get a bit of an idea of what your thoughts are as a council with respect to the wastewater system that's going in. I know you guys have got land up on the top for a lagoon, and I know you're very aware of the trial process that's taking place down in Rosebud, or at least I hope your council's aware. My concern, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, of course, is that it hasn't been approved by Alberta Environment or Health at this point. And because we're very aware of how difficult dollars are to come by, and we're doing this study with $85,000 that's been granted to us to try and make Rosebud sustainable into the future, and a lot of it has to do with obviously safe drinking water and a safe wastewater system. I'm interested to know from council's perspective where you think that we're at, and if we're tramping on your toes, or if you think that we're better to let you guys strictly deal with it and back out of this thing. We don't want to waste these hard-earned dollars, because this $85,000 that we've been granted, I don't want to duplicate what you're doing already. So part of my being here today is I want to make sure that that's not the case.
Thank you. So my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the wastewater system is in our current budget and we are applying for the grants, as you indicated. We did have some discussion around the LG pilot project that's being conducted there. One of our concerns was with the timing of that project and just the length of time it's taking to get approvals and whether it might be approved. I would say it's not necessarily redundant to still be looking at that system. I believe our system has some design elements that could integrate into that pilot project, was my understanding from what we were told.
Yeah, either system needs a lagoon. The lagoon could be smaller if the Algi project was approved, but in any event, we need a lagoon. So the grant was applied for last October. But at this point, we haven't heard anything, and obviously we won't hear anything now until after the election at some point when the budget's approved. So that's kind of where it's at. But, yeah.
Question. If at the moment Rosebud isn't in compliance with respect to the environmental and health regulations for wastewater, what kind of risks are we faced with down there? We've got somewhere close to, well, actually over 100 if you take full-time and part-time employees, and most of the residents of Rosebud and the number in the surrounding area are obviously tied in there. So
yeah, so currently we do truck the effluent away if it gets to a point. So it's not that we're not in compliance. It's the matter of we don't have the capacity to expand that community, and that's the challenge. So the existing system is aged to a point where it can't be effectively repaired. It has to be replaced with some other system. So that's kind of where it's at. So.
And just before I leave that, you've got some experience on your council, at this council table and in your administration. And you talked about approvals on different processes. And when you're talking health and environment, these sorts of things can take many, many years. And that's the reason that I'm at this table. I wish I could come in here and tell you that I've really got all kinds of confidence that because this is such an amazing thing, and it does look amazing, there's no question about that. It's just the reality of trying to get things through in legislation and regulation are a different ballgame altogether. So before I go and take money that's why I'm talking about this 85,000, and I want to make a recommendation back to my board. Before I take that, there could be better places that it could go, but they won't be in Wheatland, is the only thing. And if maybe there is a way that we could work more closely together if we do go ahead on the sustainability for that community, we'd sure be open to discussion. Because we've been operating kind of in an isolated form for an awful lot of years. And I had a meeting with the community last year, and it's the first time that the community has an opportunity to have an open meeting and ask questions of Rosebud. And there's people that have got millions of dollars invested in that hamlet. So as you guys go down the road, if anything, if you can think of anything where we can work together, and I want to bounce stuff off you as long as I'm there. We're going through a real difficult process, as I said, right now with an operational and audit and review, which is, I'm sure, there's going to be some fairly major changes so that we get up to speed with everybody else. And at the end of it, I probably won't be sitting here to chat with you. I may not be all that welcome a year from now, but we'll have a little bit of a different look to the organization at that point. And did I hear that you were retiring?
Yeah, I'm not going to run again. Yeah, you did.
Well, when I'm done, you and I are going golfing.
Just for your concerns about whether council supports where Rosebud is at, we've gone through this process with environment one other time over a water issue when the federal government changed their conditions on because of what happened down in eastern Canada. And we went toe-to-toe with environment for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and we do support Rosebud. We do know where they're at, and like Alan said with this wastewater, it may have its bumps, but we're not going to let it float down the river. We're not going to leave Rosebud suspended either. We understand the importance of it in the community and the county as a whole, and the number of dollars that residents have tied up in there. So I think you can leave here reassured that we're not going to walk away from what they've taken 30 years to develop over there. That's not our plan. The reason we went in there with this other process was because we knew that with this LJ process, we knew that Rosebud was a forward-thinking community, and they're probably the only community in this municipality that would open their arms and let us come in there and try something like that. That's why we're over there trying it. So we do support Rosebud, and I enjoy the theater as much as anybody over there. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's a hell of a lot better than going to Calgary, and the performance is just as good. So I think you can go back and tell your board to be reassured that with the wastewater, we will be on side with where making sure something happens there that keeps it viable. Yeah, we had quite a battle with environment back in the day. We hauled water in there and we supplied bottled water. We were wandering around there at midnight one night handing out bottled water to the residents because environment decided that we were the issue was, and I don't want to go into it in detail, but there was 7 municipalities in this province, 7 jurisdictions that didn't meet the federal water because they changed it that year by I don't know how many thousandths of a point. But we were the only ones that they picked on. They did not force any of the other municipalities to do what we had to do to comply to that legislation. But we did it. We got there. They're still running, so I think you're still okay there.
Thank you.
I just want to add to, yeah, we're doing the lagoon as far as I'm concerned, and basically penning the grant. You know, if we get the support, in my opinion, that is the most cost-effective solution for there. And then as also, there is a possibility that we're going to run regional water to there as well. So that's, you know, I think that's what our role is to support our hamlets, is to provide those two things for sure. the grant you're talking about, is that dealing with just the algae part of it? Is that what I'm reading or hearing?
No, it actually goes beyond that, and part of it, I think, would be maybe even of more interest to you folks, because it's a sustainability study of the whole area. And why I get a little bit nervous is I spent 15 years at a municipal council table, and I kind of know where the responsibilities and the final vote lies. And so part of it is going to be land use also when we look at it. And I'm still not totally clear on where the floodplain is down there. Rosebud, overall Rosebud, so the school and the theater are tied together, but we have quite a bit of property down in that area that we want to make proper use of. And we've got shortage of accommodation for students, shortage of accommodation for the actors. It's the other thing that amazed me. It's unbelievable the number of people that act in our plays that stay there. You know, they'll go to bed and breakfast, they'll do the whole thing. They do the whole country experience when they do it. So there's a big chunk of this study that we can help steer towards that, but at the end of the day, you're the land use authority, and you guys have the ability to allow the different things. And I don't want to go away. I don't want to spend a bunch of money and spend a bunch of time taking a look at developments in the area down there if they're not going to meet your land use plan and what you folks have got in mind for the area. So I'm interested in your take on that too, because there's a lot of area at the moment, but there's a shortage of places for people to stay, and that bed and breakfast thing is a big deal for the patrons that we've got. It's a really big deal. You only need to go to a performance now and again and take a look at the crowd to know that a lot of them maybe don't want to drive at night. And so, yeah, they look a little like you and I. But we need to attract younger patrons, and we're doing it. We need to attract more students and everything, but we're going to need the infrastructure within the community to match with that. So that's part of what we need to be in lockstep with you guys, because I don't want to start making plans and then wind up at the council table, or your municipal planning commission sits down and says, you know, that's a little too close to a floodplain, or no, we're not going to allow tiny homes. Like, where are you guys on tiny homes? Have you got anything in your policies or bylaws with respect to allowing these new tiny dwellings?
I don't think it's addressed in our land use bylaw, is it? Tiny homes?
There is, it is addressed slightly, but we haven't fully developed that with the new council. So you got to remember that there's, 5 out of 7 new, so that hasn't come to forefront. But I've seen the plans of what you guys have there, and I think it's doable in that community for sure.
I don't think there's been a huge focus on land use or planning in Rosebud because of the limits with our infrastructure capacity. So
Right.
I think once we can address some of those, then we'll have an opportunity to sit down and have some of those conversations around what we want planning to look like, what we would consider. Yeah, it's just really been a limit with capacity that we really haven't had conversations around it. There is one new development subdivision that was approved. I think, is it 16 lots that were approved? But beyond that, we haven't had any applications, and we haven't really had any council discussion around it yet.
Okay.
So.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we especially don't want to get ahead of you guys. So we're not going to, obviously, we can't make decisions without approvals that come through this body. And I think the best way to save us all a lot of trouble is if we work together and work very closely together as we go through this study. And we're going to seek your guidance. We need to know as we go down the road on this thing, what's going to be possible. We don't.
So just not to interrupt you, Jack, but just a quick question. Do you have the local councillor, because I know he speaks very highly of Rosebud, and he will defend what's going on there. Did you have him sitting on that with you when you're making those decisions?
No, but that's a great idea. Glenn's not going to retire too, is he?
Well, whether he does or not, if a new one comes
Yeah,
in.
we should have a counselor
pull
on
him-
it,
pull him-
absolutely.
Pull him in there.
Like even our public meeting, we didn't have a representative, I don't think, from Wheatland, did we, at our public meeting? Did you attend?
I was at one for the LG project.
Oh, okay, you weren't at the one that we hosted. Yeah, okay. And I see he's not here with us today. I pass along my regards, and I hope it wasn't the food at Rosebud, but no,
No.
just kidding.
He's at a seniors housing conference today, so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's been very supportive. Glenn's been very supportive and made good use of the complimentary tickets every year. So I know that he knows what's going on with the productions and whatnot. But yeah, absolutely, I'd welcome the opportunity to have a representative from council working with us on this thing that can communicate and bring the stuff back to you folks. And also anytime you're just a short hop, 2 hours and 20 minutes away. So, but happy to come down and chat with you while I'm involved with the organization. That's the biggest part of it. The operational review that's taking place right now, we're using the information from that to help us in our selection of a new executive director. And without going into too many details, we've had 5 executive directors in a very short period of time at Rosebud. And every organization needs to operate efficiently and effectively and follow policy and all of those sorts of things. So we're trying to identify our own challenges and weaknesses so that when we do the selection this next time, we make sure we've got the appropriate candidate in there to deal with what we're looking at into the future for the school side, but also for the entertainment and the Rosebud side. And if there are any suggestions from your council, if you have a position on anything or see any direction you'd like to see us go, I want to tell you that I want to see the number of students doubled. But that's a personal goal that I'd like to see in the not too distant future because it's an amazing opportunity for the kids that go there. And we are recognized at a number of post-secondary institutions for what we offer. So people are after the graduates of Rosebud to further their career. But then it all comes back to if there isn't a pillow for them to lay their head on, we can't, because it isn't just students. I go out to double the number of students. Now all of a sudden my teaching staff varies and we just can't keep people if they're all commuting from Calgary.
Absolutely.
So I think that basically throws everything on the table that's going on, and we're looking under every stone to find all the efficiencies that we can. We've got a heritage building there that I expect that you folks signed off on. We're in conversation with a donor right at the moment to try and put a new roof on it. I think that could be a real gem for your municipality and something you could point people to. I don't know how often you're speaking to the businesses in the area, but I know I'm getting phone calls because there was a lot of concern when that debt got up to the $600,000. There's people with a big investment down there and they wanted to know what's going on. And as a matter of fact, I was returning a phone call to one of your ratepayers on my way here today, and we're playing phone tag, so I'll chat with them on the way back. But something that's impressed me now that I've got into it further is the number of dollars people have invested in that community. There is no other hamlet in my experience that I've seen anything like that.
Absolutely.
So it's something that together we sure don't want to see that disappear.
Mr. Hayden, we really appreciate you coming in. I love Rosebud. It is a gem. We love the theater. We saw Bright Star a couple of weeks ago, and I'll certainly encourage everybody we know to come out and see it. It was an incredible show. So, yes.
Oh yeah, you have to go for
If you
that.
go to Bright Star, bring tissue because I cried almost as much as I laughed. But
Treat us right, I might sell you the lamp.
it was very good. And we appreciate you coming in and starting this conversation or continuing this conversation. So thank you.
Wonderful. At any time, as I say, feel free to get a hold of me. If everything else fails, I know your administrator knows how to track me down, and I know that Ben does, and I haven't changed the number, even though he knows it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Sure, can I have a motion to accept that? All in favor? Donna. Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.2H, a contract for assessment services. Does the administration wish to speak to the RFD?
Morning, Council. Are there any questions on the RFD?
I'll move the recommendation.
Are there any questions or discussion? I just had one question. So with a plan to move to all in-house services, is that with current staff or will there be increased staffing demands for that?
That will be for the residential component. There's still some contract services for some of the DIP property that I may be utilizing some assistance on. But for the res and basic non-res, I always have a bit of a budget for potential contract services in case a complicated situation arises via complaint or even from a new development, because there's potential for that to exist at any time. So I want to be able to draw on expertise in case it's above my capability.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion on the floor, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you for coming in. 3.2I, we have fire guardians. An amendment to the approved guardians. Good morning.
Good morning, all. With the fire guardians, we had a little bit of a hang up with the Village of Stannard. They just wanted to ensure that their members would be indemnified if they operated as a fire guardian. So now that we've had some correspondence back and forth, the association and the village both approve them for being fire guardians. And with the approval of council, we'll add them to the list of approved guardians for the county.
I'll move that council approve an addition of 2 fire guardians, Phil Fabian and Malcolm McKinnon, for Wheeling County effective April 16th, 2019, until February 28th, 2020.
Are there any questions regarding the RFD? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have an RFD regarding bylaw 2019-15, a motor transport bylaw. Oh, sorry, fire board bylaw. I apologize. I'm sorry. You thought I was going to skip it. Sorry, 3.2J. My apologies. I see the amendment was made that was requested following first reading. Anybody have any questions?
I'll move second reading.
Did administration have any comments that you wanted to make regarding it?
Through the chair, none additional as presented for council's wishes. We made those changes.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of second reading? Motion is carried. Consideration for third and final reading?
I'll move third and final.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Just before you continue on, Madam Chair, just next steps would be advertising for the 2 public board members, correct, Stuart? And what's the anticipation of starting up of the fire board now that it's approved?
If possible, I'd like to get going in the next 30 days. Yes, sir. So we'll get advertising going right away. I'll work with the communications officer and getting that kicked out.
Wonderful, thank you.
So in a perfect world, where would we like the, where are the members at large going to be?
So in the bylaw, it states that we'll try and have geographic representation from across the county. So because we have fire association presidents covering the majority of our east side, my suspicion would be that preference would go to members at large from the west side of the county.
So administration will make a recommendation based on exactly that, location and the individual involved and their qualifications and experience. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you. Now we'll do bylaw 2019-15, motor transport bylaw. Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of council. Thanks for taking the time to see me this morning. So I'm presenting motor transport bylaw 2019-15 with the request to remove section 6B, which currently restricts tri-drive trucks and truck tractors to a maximum of 21,000 kilograms on local roads. Background behind it is this has come to council many times before, several times before. Back approximately 2003, 2004, Alberta Transportation started allowing for tri-drive trucks and tractors to be, used on Alberta roadways by permit to a maximum of 23,000 kilograms. Due to the way legislation was written, these fit into what's called a short spread TRIDM. So by legislation, the maximum allowable weight is 21,000 kilograms. So at the time, Wheatland County decided to keep the weight restriction at 21,000 kilograms, as did several other municipalities around. However, since then, most have lifted that requirement, as well as the province is still permitting them to 23,000 kilograms, and there is no anticipation of a legislation change at this time. However, the permits will be continuing to do so. We've been discovering that many ratepayers and industry individuals in our area and from outside of the area are purchasing these because a tandem truck can carry 17,000 kilograms on a tandem axle, whereas a TRIDM can carry the 23. So with that extra 6,000 kilograms, they can make fewer trips, same amount of product. So we're just kind of looking for consistency and to assist our ratepayers so they can move forward in working with that.
And it should be noted the county has a tri-drive truck. And our end dumps are tri-drive, are not drive, but they're tri-trailer, and it's the same amount of weight, basically. But you can add more with the tractor, so. It's a more efficient way to move things.
That being said, I will move option 1.
So are you providing first reading? Because we need 3 readings on this.
I will move for first reading on option 1, removing section 6B from bylaw. Yeah.
Yes, I've stricken the section.
No public hearing is required for this, is there, Alan? Any questions or discussion regarding the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. If we want to consider that?
Yeah, well, it doesn't say anything. I'll recommend second reading.
So motion for second reading. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We need permission to go to third reading.
I'll move permission.
All in favor? Motion is carried unanimously.
I'll move third reading.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Scott moved third.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. Good day.
Thank you. There's an RFD regarding donation of a gift to the Wheatland Crisis Society from the Safety Day funds which would come from the WCB/PIR rebate. It's traditionally used for a gift for staff. And they are requesting that it instead, half of it be donated to the Wheatland Crisis Society as a thanks for their speaking and as a donation. Alan, is it that we don't know the amount yet? Is that why there's no
That's correct.
specific
We
amount?
don't know the exact amount yet, no. It's around $8,000, I believe.
Just depends on that rebate. Somebody want to make the motion?
I will. I move that the council approve the donation of 1/2 of the annual WCB PIR rebate that is traditionally used for the Safety Recognition Program gift to the Wheatland Crisis Society for their presentation during the Safety Day, and that the other half of the annual rebate be moved to the Safety Reserve for 2020 Safety Day.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.2M. Surface lease rate renewal.
Any?
Ben has moved. Is there any questions or discussion? 3.2M. Torx and Energy's surface lease rate renewal. Any questions or discussion regarding the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to the Canadian Ambient Air Quality Standards. 3.2N.
I just wanted to make a mention, Madam Chair, in regards to this item on N. I received some correspondence from CRAS and had staff do a little research. They put together this report, and again, it comes back to the advocacy. I think the importance that advocacy in our environment has around the CMRB table.
I just want to confirm we're not a member of CRAS anymore, correct?
Anybody have any questions or comments? All in favor? Motion is carried. Three 3.20 ASB building expansion. Thank you. Mike, did you want to speak to this? Sure. Thank you.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
So at the April 2nd Council meeting, a motion was carried to approve Wheatland County award the contract to construct the ASB building expansion to the low bidder NIB Developments at the submitted bid of $2.2 million. Further, the construction consisted of 2 additional service bays, a wash bay, and 2-level addition. Further, that the administration provide a presentation to council regarding this project scope and specifically the wash bay. So that's why you see a little additional details here as far as how we came to our conclusion on the necessity for this wash bay. So just an overview here. So we currently use a couple wash facilities in Strathmore, primarily the one on the west side of town there. So I did just a little bit of a research into what we actually spend on small vehicles there. We have around $4,200 a year in small vehicles, and then the $4,300 that we have, you see here, that's actually a contract company that we have come out and wash on site here. That's for our large equipment, the scrapers and a couple dozers once a year. Right at the end of the year, we have a contractor come out and spray them down or wash them down. So that is our approximate washing cost per year. So looking at alternatives, we did look at the only facility in Strathmore that could actually fit our equipment would be the one on the west side there. And you can see on the back side, there's a little more detail to the sheet as far as layout of the site down there. I did speak with the owner. He was open to us bringing equipment in there at the onset here. So I looked at the feasibility of how we actually get the equipment in there. We have a very large trailer, a 16-wheeler with a Jeep that we use to haul our equipment. And that would physically fit into the north portion there. We actually had tried to bring that trailer in there last year to wash it down, and we're unsuccessful being able to make the corner into that bay. It's 117 feet long, the whole unit, so it's quite extensive to try and get in there. So we would have to offload each piece of equipment and attempt to bring it into the wash bay there. I'm not sure, I haven't specifically asked the owner what his concerns would be on that, but it's 92,000 pounds, the scraper there, so there's a potential for damage to the asphalt there and the roadway. I did talk to Strathmore as well about bringing it from the south, and they're not in favor of us offloading anything on that road there. So basically this is not really a very feasible option for us to bring our equipment in and have it washed. So we did look at what the cost would be, like I say there, with utilizing that, about 4 hours to wash a piece of equipment. We're looking at about 20 grand a year if we were to wash all the equipment that we would like to start washing on this. We're only doing 6 pieces a year right now, and with, like I said before, with concerns over or transfer of weeds, really maintenance on our equipment, cleaner equipment is easier to maintain, easier to detect issues prior to them becoming major. So there's just a couple points to consider on the bottom portion of the page here. And I guess just above that, I did look at the alternative of basically what we do right now. I say with a contractor, we bring it into the yard, we wash it, we don't retain any of the water, and we are quickly becoming apparent to us that storm pond is groundwater influenced, and we do have restrictions on anything flowing into that. So we're going to have to build basically a separate washing area that doesn't impact the drainage into that site. So that's something that we would have to look at regardless. If we didn't do the wash bay, we wouldn't be able to maintain the same washing procedure that we have right now. And then I just looked at the same 34 units, having that contractor come in and do it, and that's where you see the 32,000 a year on that. So there's just some details on what we were looking at for, hopefully that's enough for council, and I can answer any questions if you like.
So, just through the chair, when we first built this place out here, one of the reasons we had to look at somewhere else was for our shops was because of that exact issue that you're talking about, is getting our equipment in and out of the town of Strathmore because of the weight restrictions. I'm really surprised that they're allowing you to take that heavy equipment in there and offloading it and using that. I'm surprised the town is allowing you on those streets to do that. So I don't have an issue with your recommendation.
I saw 2 concerns, I guess, Mike, with the amount of washing here that you're looking at, the amount of water you're going to be utilizing. So does a well can then handle it for one, and also the wastewater can then handle collecting that too, because the discharge, I mean, that's a substantial amount of water you're going to add to was probably designed here not to absorb that.
Right.
So that's some concerns I have. I don't have a problem having an outside pad. Like, I don't know why we wouldn't have a lined pond here right now for runoff, for salts and things like that. We should have had that a long time ago, in my opinion, because I know the transportation shops all around here, they all have a salt retention and evaporation system, along with the greases as well. So we definitely need to do something. I don't know if this is necessarily what I would want to see, but I'd need to know that the water and wastewater can handle it without having to upgrade, because that's a lot of water in a short period of time, it'd be right before winter hits. So, unless we're gonna truck it off, and then there'll be more cost.
So just to answer a couple of those, so we haven't looked into detail for sure because, well, haven't done the analysis on the wash bay. We did spec a water recycling system as part of the wash bay. It wouldn't strictly be fresh groundwater that would be washing that. It would be a recycled system through there. The efficiencies of that, I'm not entirely sure, but we do have a contractor that submitted the proposal that's pretty well versed in those recycled systems. So at the same time, we've also are looking at alternate uses for that pond because right now we are close to our allocation limits for our wells. But as you saw in the environmental audit there, a big part of that is filling our water trucks and filling fire trucks for pump testing, that sort of thing. We are looking through the water licensing to utilize that pond for part of that system. We did get approval last week on using it for dust control. So I don't think it'd be that far of a stretch to get them to, sorry, for irrigation. So I don't think it'd be that far of a stretch to get it for dust control or that sort of method.
So my understanding then the wash bay, the water from there would go to a pond and not to the wastewater system that's here?
No, so through the chair, it would still be discharged into the sanitary system, the lagoon over there.
Okay.
But hopefully with the recycle system, it's a much less discharge, a much lower discharge than straight fresh water.
So, Madam Chair, there was a motion previously of council on April 2nd, 2019, Resolution 1904-58. Kester moved approval that Wheatland County award the contract to construct the agricultural services building expansion to the lowest bidder NIB Developments at the submitted bid of $2,200,000. Further, that this construction consists of 2 additional service bays, a wash bay, and a 2-level office addition to the existing agricultural services building. Further, the administration provide a presentation to council regarding project scope, specifically the wash bay. So that's kind of closing the loop on that, we feel, as far as the wash bay. So if there's any further information, we can provide that. If not, I think there is a new request for decision that was handed out too. So.
Council's wishes.
I'll move the request.
For the 2.268. Questions or discussion?
I understand we need a new ASB building. There are just too many unanswered. Can we put this, I want more answers on the wash bay. The rest of it, I'm fine with. The 400,000 or whatever it is with the wash bay, I have real problems with that. I'm good with 1.8 million and put the wash bay on the side then, and there has to be more justification than this.
Open to the idea of an outside wash bay?
The liability, we've got a piece of property in town that we are dealing with from 20 years ago. And I just don't want the same thing to happen again. I just don't think I think we're going to be drilling wells. We're going to be doing all sorts of stuff here. And if we don't have the wash bay here, we can at least push that down the road for a little while.
Can administration speak to the potential liability with the wash bay? I'm assuming that there's standards for how you deal with that, but I'm not very knowledgeable about it.
And through the chair, I'm not very well versed in the actual standards for release of that water either. I mean, we are utilizing an existing wastewater plant, which is very similar to other collection systems in the area. When I've spoken with the developer, the contractor on this, he's built fairly recent ones for larger farmers in the area here, and they utilize the same sort of retention discharge areas for that. So and like I say, we haven't got too deep into the detailed engineering on this because we haven't got approval on that yet, but I think those would come out with that at that time.
Just the environmental concerns, like you're bringing us environmental concerns about what we're doing currently. What I see is opening up more questions than answers, and with very little answers, and I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, spending money the right way, having the right amount of water, having the right amount of treatment to treat it before I can make a decision that I want to fund it. Even outdoors, the same thing, it's no different. As soon as it's that liability is still there. And again, looking at history of what we've done, I worked at the old county shop and I've seen what was buried there and we're dealing with that. And I don't want to have that legacy left here as well. If we got to make the decision and it has to be the environmentally way to do it, and it costs more, that's fine. And if it's cheaper to go contractor, that's fine too with me. It's somebody else's issue, as long as they're willing to accept it. So it's hard for me to make a decision on that because I don't feel there's enough there.
I'm just curious if there's more environmental liability if we don't do it and we continue to wash in the yard and have that runoff run into a runoff pond that is fed by groundwater. That's.
Yeah. So through the chair, as I mentioned, we would not be continuing the same washing method that we are right now. We'd have to, we've made note of that in environmental audit, and it's a major concern for us. So we're not going to be continuing on the same methods that we are right now. We're going to have to look at alternatives one way or another for washing our equipment.
Well, through the chair, I can understand some of the concern about the environmental issues, but everything we do has an environmental risk to it, and everything we do, we have to follow the regulations, the environmental coding, everything that goes that's current right now. We'll be following it. We aren't going to be breaking any regulations or rules when we're putting this thing together. We're going to be following all the regulations. And if we wait 2 years to do it, there'll be different regulations, and we're going to follow them too. We'd have followed them 10 years ago if we'd have built it 10 years ago. And 30 years from now, the same law will come into effect. It's past practice, present problem. We're dealing with that on other issues too. But that doesn't mean we sit still and wait. We need this stuff. The crews need it. We need to be able to move forward. And if we start getting kickback from some of the landowners and not allowing us on their land because their machinery is getting a little bit dirty for them, it's going to cost us a lot more than what we're talking about today.
I think logistically it makes sense to consider it now if we're going to consider it, because there's going to be economies of building it with the ASB expansion as well. I think our costs are likely lower right now during the downturn, given the price of contracting and things like that. I know I've had some conversations with ratepayers about that recently. I'd like our staff to be able to do this on site if they can and not have to deal with some of the challenges of not having, I don't know what you were saying, turn radius and things like that for trying to get into places with giant equipment. And lastly, I think we need to make the commitment to our egg producers that our equipment is going to be clean when we're operating near agriculture. So, and the weeds are just going to become more of an issue. We have clubroot in municipalities all around us, and we may have it here, but it hasn't been identified yet, and I certainly wouldn't want to be contributing to that issue. So I personally, I support the inclusion of the wash bay in the contract.
I'll call the question and ask for a recorded vote.
Somebody make a motion? Ben did? Okay. Any further questions or discussion? You want a recorded vote? All in favor? Ben, Jason, Donna, and myself. Opposed? Tom and Scott. Motion is carried. Thank you for preparing this and bringing it to us. Good morning. Welcome. We have our Honorable MP for Bow River, Martin Shields, has joined us. Yes, I think you'll stay for lunch. Wonderful.
We'll do a quick conversation because I'm getting hangry.
Okay.
You got.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate being here. Thanks for the opportunity. So are you going to break for lunch or after I speak, or after we ask questions?
If you want to speak first, and then we can break for lunch whenever we're ready.
I mean, he's excited. I don't want to slow him down.
Exactly.
Anyways, it's great to be here in the municipal council. I speak to a lot of students, and in the last couple of days, a number of schools. And again, I will say that municipal level, and many of you have heard me say this before, is still the best level of government we have. You work at issues by issues, and you decide them vote by vote on any particular issue. You're closest to the people that you represent. And I work 30 weeks a year, 3,000 kilometers away from 60 communities. And so I really appreciate what you do in the sense of representing people locally. I think that makes a lot of difference in what you can do. You have to live with those people and live with the decisions you make, and you find out the next morning whether people appreciate it or not. And I know I've been on the end of making decisions and finding out that, gee, we made some mistakes, and sometimes we make mistakes. But you can fix it. At my level, you got to change the government, and you spend your first 2 years rejecting all the stuff that the last government did. So municipalities have a lot more flexibility to make decisions and change things as you need to, much better than we. Yeah, that would be, I remember one time when I was vice president of AUMA, and we met with cabinet, and I'm trying to remember the issue, but it got very, very heated. And one of the ministers says, well, we created you, we can get rid of you just as easy. And my response is, well, I know what the federal government does, I know what we do. You can have our keys, because I don't think you do much at all, and you're going to find out what municipalities do. And that was the end of the meeting. But there's some substance to that as you talk with students and find out what it is that all levels do. But the importance of municipal government is really important. So in the world that we're living in, things in agriculture at the moment, if you're in the canola and agriculture products, things are not good in the sense of trade. China is doing their political thing. People keep talking about science, and it's not about science. It's about politics on trade with canola. The seed is what they've said they're not taking, but they're not buying the oil and meal either. They're just not saying it officially. They just, you want to ship it over here, it's just going to sit in the port in a boat. So that's a huge issue in agriculture in our area. But we also have other challenges in trade with Italy and durum wheat, with Saudi Arabia and barley, and there's something else out there that's India and the peas and lentils. So there's a lot of issues in agriculture as far as trading the product that comes out of this particular area, and it's not good. Hopefully hopefully, some of those things get fixed and soon. NAFTA, I don't know if that NAFTA 2, or whatever you want to call it, is ever going to get signed, or we'll be back at the table in the next round. So that's also another challenge. I'm hearing on the tariffs side from, we've got metal manufacturing in the riding places, a large one here in Strathmore. The tariffs are killing those guys. It's brutal on the aluminum steel. So we do have metal manufacturing in the riding, and that's a brutal piece. That will push back into agriculture in the sense of machinery and the steel prices of machinery. As for municipality, you buy machinery as well. There's steel in that, and that could be a problem, not for long in the sense of seeing increases in that cost. Somebody asked me, where's the money going for the tariffs that the government's charging? Well, it's not going back to those industries at the moment. The government's got it in general revenue at the moment. It's not flowing too transparently back to anything to subsidize that tariff cost. Trade, in a sense, in agriculture, that's probably the biggest one out there. Carbon tax is another piece of that, that heats up. Sunday night was Game of Thrones on TV, and I imagine there was a large following of that. Tonight is the second Game of Thrones in the province of Alberta as the vote's happening here. This one will be interesting in the sense of the vote counting, and you're probably familiar that this is going to be like BC's that are going to count the ones that went in the ballot box today. The ones that 700,000, at least 230,000 of those were out of constituency, and that will take much longer. It took 2 weeks in BC. And the other 500,000 that are out there is sort of counting slowly afterwards, and I'm not sure how quickly. So we may know something tonight, but in BC it dragged on for 2 weeks when the close ridings they had to count. So it could be interesting tonight what happens on that one. So we'll see. Sorry? Hopefully it's not that close. We hope so. And that. You were the wise man. And that's an interesting process in a sense of scrutineering on the next 2 weeks of how that happens. Exactly. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I would agree, but that seems to be what we're hearing. Also on the federal, I mean, the one thing, the budget that sort of disappeared in the flow of media over SNC Lavalin, there was a budget that did come out. The one thing that is very small and very tiny in there that is a positive for municipalities was the one-time gas tax increase that they are pushing out. I think it's about $2 billion and something. It's a one-time. The gas tax as a municipality, we liked it because that gave us control of, there were parameters, but it gave us the flexibility. It's not winners and losers on grants. You get to decide. So that one-time piece out there, that's a positive for me in a sense of municipalities. Personally, I would like a lot more of the funding that comes for infrastructure coming that way and not by winners and losers of grants. Because as we know, in the last few years, the winners and losers in grants, some of it's gotten stuck and directed into general revenue in the province. I remember Brian Mason promising municipalities about $1.2 billion, and then there was $600 million. And where did that $600 million go? You promised? Oh, sorry, it went into general revenue that was supposed to come to municipalities, and that was about 3 years ago. Amarjeet Sohi was the infrastructure minister at that time, and he and I sat on the AUMA board together. So he did not like it in the House when I questioned him on it because he knew where it went, and I knew he knew where it went. And he had approved that that could go to his friend Brian Mason to general revenue. He didn't like that one when you actually know that. So for municipalities, the infrastructure has been slow, the money coming out. I think they had 180 some billion that they've talked about over 10 years, but getting that money out the door in this 3 years, the Auditor General says they're less than 10% of the money that they were supposed to get out for infrastructure to municipalities. Hasn't happened, which has been just brutal in the process, promising it, but it not coming. Makes it tough for municipalities to plan when those promises are out there and it doesn't flow. You've got lots of challenges. So that's infrastructure part, but the gas tax and that other piece, the bump that's in this budget, to me, that's a good thing. But I'd like to see a lot more of it done that way instead of the winners and losers of grants. And a lot of that, in this province is headed into Edmonton and Calgary, which is a challenge as they pick up a huge amount of money. Your part of the wheatland is in the Calgary Regional, not all of it. Calgary Regional, you're working with that, and that's an interesting game that you're involved with Calgary. So that's good luck with that one. That's a tough one, especially only part of the wheatland counties in it. Makes it very hard for you, I would guess. Other than that, federally, the budget is another $20 billion deficit. They had an increase of $10 billion income over what they predicted. So it's not that they had a shortage of money coming in or less, they had more. So they spent that, plus borrowed another $20 billion. Balancing a budget is not something that's relevant to this particular government. Municipalities, you can go deficit as long as you got the plan to pay it back. They don't. Around $700 billion. Oh. Yeah. There is no doubt that when the Harper government, in the time of 2008 and turned down in the economy, that the Conservatives borrowed money, increased debt. But in the last 3 years, that hasn't been the case. They've increased revenue that has come in. The economy has worked. It hasn't been what Harper did, because the Liberals throw it back and say we borrowed money, went deficit. In a couple of years, we really did. But the economy had turned very down at that point. Quebec. Yep, Quebec is booming. Industries in Quebec are the younger people have stayed in business. The entrepreneur business in Quebec is really cranking up. There's shortage of staffing. I talk with a couple of the MPs that have packing plants. Pork is big. Packing plants, and they were where we were with Lakeside here a few years ago. They want to come out and see how they get staff here. But they probably have in Quebec, what they want to come in are only French-speaking people, and so that's why they're jammed up worse than what we were here in the packing industry. So the economy in Quebec is, Southern Ontario is hurting. Oshawa, Windsor in the car industry. When you've got Michigan and Ohio just across the border with Trump and his reducing of taxes, no carbon tax. I spoke with met with a guy here about 2 months ago. He's got huge RV business, huge. He's moving to Michigan. He will have a satellite business in Ottawa and another place in Ontario, but he's moving his business to Michigan. He says, I can't deal with the taxes here anymore. And so that's part of the problem in Ontario. Now, maybe Ford will be able to deal with that a bit, but that's been the problem with the industry in Ontario, is the taxing versus what's Trump did across the line. And so that's a challenge. Yeah. Electrical is cheap in Quebec, by the way, very cheap. That's another advantage they have with their hydro.
Oh, but that's not much equalization.
No, it's not an equalization formula. Right. So, yeah, Alberta's, the economy here is But Canada-wide, the prediction is we're slowing down Canada-wide as well. That's one of the reasons we thought Trudeau might have called an early election, but with SNC-Lavalin, that they need to find ways to rebound from that mess. So the possibility, because of them worrying about the economy being in worse shape in October, I think they're basically saying we've just got to deal with that one because SNC-Lavalin is too much of a hammer on them at the point. The other one that's going to, if they're able to delay the Admiral Norman trial, they will probably try to delay past election. If the information is gotten out about that one, it's actually worse than SNC-Lavalin. So they will do everything they can to delay it and keep everything from being public record on that one. So, you want to hear stories about a banana republic and who controls the boxes for elections and who appoints they go to Quebec? No, I didn't say that. All right.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it, and please join us for lunch. I did present that to council, but we thought it might be nice just